Warning, we are not your attorneys. Please, don't take anything we say as legal advice. I'm Jeff.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Derek.
And you are listening to the Not So Grand Jury,
which is now sponsored by Morwa P. LLC.
All right, we're back with more Suits because it wasn't enough the first time around. We need to have more fun with Suits.
I wonder if our scores will be different.
Well, I can guarantee you on one of them, the scores are not going to be different. Maybe one of us may have actually enjoyed any aspect of this episode. We'll see. But we are talking about the 11th episode of season 1 called Rules of the Game, aired September 1 of 2011. There's basically 3 separate storylines, so I'm going to give plots to each of them, and then we will dive into... Despite the fact, so I purposely went on my way to pick an episode that was relatively self-contained from start to finish. There wasn't a lot of sort of, there's certain things that could have happened in the last 9 episodes that may influence some certain things, but I wanted it so that Mike and Jeff did not have to watch all of season 1 of Suits if they didn't want to.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
This was back when they were 22 episodes, too.
There's a lot of episodes of Suits. Okay, so first off, we have what I'm going to call the A-plot, which is Harvey's main storyline. Harvey, unexpectedly runs into his former mentor from the DA's office, Cameron Dennis, who is the district attorney of New York, apparently, played by Gary Cole, who I think is in everything. Isn't Gary Cole just...
At this point in time, he was in like 3 different HBO shows at the same time.
Right. He just appears in series.
But he's just a bit actor in every show.
There we go. So he runs to Cameron Dennis. It turns out Cameron Dennis is currently under investigation for allegations of suppressing and falsifying evidence to secure convictions. Cameron basically attempts to lean on Harvey, expecting loyalty in exchange basically for protection. We very quickly realize that Harvey's fully aware of what Cameron Dennis did in at least a few cases. It sounds like that, some of the cases that Cameron handled are actually going to taint Harvey's own record. There's this sort of separate, a subplot of the A-plot where somehow Pearson Hardman, no one is aware of the fact that Harvey used to be a DA. That's interesting. I guess one of the reasons why he hid it is because of this, but
that doesn't actually make sense either, because it didn't seem like...
No. So the whole thing's confusing.
And at least his mentor who hired him knew. So why she would have had a question about why it's not on your bio on the court website or on the firm website. But
it's a weird subplot. I don't understand it. But anyway, at one point, Alexandra Leeds, who's with the Attorney General's office, threatens and then actually subpoenas Harvey, pressuring him to testify against Dennis, and we can talk about why that makes no sense. Subpoenaing to give testimony in front of the grand jury doesn't exactly make sense. But anyway, basically, and she threatens Harvey with disbarment because he's hiding, she thinks that he's hiding stuff about Dennis. Basically, there's a good chunk of the episode where Harvey sort of seems to be wrestling back and forth as to whether he should be loyal to his mentor versus his ethical responsibilities. It turns out that Donna, so Harvey's secretary, we didn't talk much about Donna in the pilot because what she does is actually semi-normal in the episode, which is be a very good secretary and actually give Harvey what he wants before he knows he wants it, which, by the way, that's what a good admin does. Is I'm not saying a good admin will know you didn't get your coffee in that morning or that you whatever, but that's generally what a good admin does. And Donna, who has a lot of different plots throughout the series of Scrubs. We're still in the sort of early seasons where she doesn't have too much of a role. But it turns out that in this episode, she has this crucial documentation.
Again, this is Suits.
Oh, God, what did I say this time?
You said Scrubs again.
That's not relevant right now. It's just always on my mind. Please don't leave me for a baritone.
I'm so good at this. Okay. So Donna does not have that many plots that, at least early on, her plot points are sort of more BC plot. This is an interesting one where she has the supposed crucial documentation proving that like Cameron's wrongdoing and gives it to Jessica, who then negotiates her own separate deal that forces Cameron to step down while Harvey faces no charges. This actually sort of leads into the next episode, which we haven't watched, where Harvey is trying to get an innocent man who was jailed due to the evidence suppression out of jail. We don't have to get into that.
I was going to ask, is that because that's the end of it?
It does roll right into that. And that's the next episode.
Okay. That's nice.
Do we find out if my memory of this episode is correct? We never see what Donna's evidence is.
Correct.
Do we see it in the next episode? Do you know? Or is it just like, here's an
I don't
envelope
believe
of
so.
Documents? Okay.
I don't believe we ever truly find out.
Okay.
And there is a bunch of these things that happen in Suits. Like Suits is very similar to Law and Order in that respect, where someone gets handed a piece of paper and they immediately know everything that's on the piece of paper and it solves everything.
Well, that's how learning works.
Correct. Where like, Donna shows this to Jessica and she's already aware of everything that's in it by immediately opening up the folder and being like, oh yeah, this is the perfect evidence that I can blackmail Cameron with. And you're like, sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't believe we ever find out what's in the piece. What's in the documentation. Then we go into the B plot, which we'll call the Harvey adjacent plot, but it's more Mike versus Lewis. We didn't get into Lewis last episode, even though we sort of meet him and find out, again, another character that Jeff doesn't like. So let's get into, so first off, the firm receives news that Malcolm Price, who apparently is a client of the firm, dies, and he's left his estate, including a tabloid called Nothing But the Truth, which apparently made a lot of money over the firm over the years. Because, of course, they had to represent the tabloid in many things, because I'm sure they said dumb shit all the time, or incorrect stuff, or inappropriately investigated, you name it.
Yeah.
It's a tabloid. They need lawyers. And it sounds like Pearson Hardman spent a lot of time representing them. And so he leaves his estate to his two daughters, Kelsey and Madison, who, let's just say, don't love each other. Not a lot of sisterly love there. And in a completely normal and not at all issue when it comes to conflict of interest, Lewis Litt, who is the partner at the firm played by Rick Hoffman, is aside Madison's side, and Harvey, essentially Mike, handles Kelsey's interests, and they're supposed to divvy it up amongst themselves. Because again, that's how that works. Basically, Lewis bets Harvey that if Lewis wins, and we don't really know what wins is, but they're like, we know who wins. He gets Mike for a while. And then eventually Harvey wagers Lewis's opera tickets instead, although at first he just says, I don't need anything from you, and basically bets nothing against Mike, which I find kind of funny.
I did like that bit. That was good.
I did. I think I like it too. And again, like Lewis is sort of portrayed as he's a competent lawyer, but just kind of like the loser partner who's never going to be as good as Harvey and wants to be as good as Harvey.
Right. He's a little schlubbier than Harvey.
Right, exactly. Obviously, you guys don't get as much information from watching, only these episodes, but like really Suits steers into it for a while. Like Lewis has some very weird hobbies, including going mudding, where you just sit in mud. And
that's what they call mudding? Like not like driving cars in mud, but just sitting in it?
Well, they is Lewis. I don't know if there's other theys, but that's what Lewis calls mudding. And then basically as part of this plot, Mike proposes a solution where like Kelsey would acquire the tabloid by purchasing the sort of overarching company, which gives both sisters a share. It turns out Lewis sabotages Mike by breaking the rules of them not looking at internal documentation. Yeah, it's a whole thing. The whole thing's stupid. And then in the end, Harvey gets pissed, partially because of other reasons, but Harvey gets pissed because he thinks that Lewis has effectively cheated. Anyway, Lewis wins over Harvey, but doesn't even want Mike because he says Mike sucks. Essentially, that's how that goes. Then there's a complete C plot, which isn't really a big part of any of the legal stuff, but it talks about sort of the relationships within firms. Mike's girlfriend Jenny confronts Mike about his relationship with Rachel. Lewis stirs the pot by revealing he suspects something between Mike and Rachel, which, yeah, that's appropriate for a partner to do to an associate's girlfriend, which then leads to them insisting on a double date with Rachel to make it look like it's okay. And that just doesn't go great, and the whole thing gets weird. That's the short version. There are many issues in this very relatively self-contained episode. Should we dive right into the conflict of interest?
I think so. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the big one.
Okay. So the firm represents a deceased
Something.
or the companies of the deceased.
The estate.
Well, we're not sure if they. Okay. So before he dies, he sounds like he's the main client, and they represent all of his companies in some capacity.
Sure.
That's not abnormal. That does happen all the time. Someone has a bunch of series of companies, portfolio of companies, and you may represent him. You may represent the companies, a little bit of both, especially if they're sort of smaller companies where he's in charge.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. He has now died. There is a scenario where a firm could represent his estate. Normally, it would go to a very specific firm that handles estates.
Yes.
Yeah, but
that.
maybe it's a large firm and there's an estate practice there.
There is. Now, of course, we don't know about that because this is Pearson Hardman. We only know about Harvey and Lewis, who are, as we know, Harvey knows everything. Litigation, transactional, criminal, you name it, he knows everything, and apparently so does Lewis. So apparently they're now experts in this. So the company represents, at least at minimum, the deceased's ongoing companies, and the deceased estate. That in and of itself might not be conflicts. We now get into a very huge conflict where potential heirs are now being not only represented by the company, but two different partners who also represent the estate are now individually representing two of the parties. There's about
who are
three
at odds.
Correct.
Malcolm Price died last week.
Truly great loss for humanity.
You want to mock the dead? Fine. But his tabloid, Nothing But the Truth, has made us a fortune. Price has left his estate, 10 companies, including the tabloid, to his 2 daughters, Madison and Kelsey. We have been asked to divide the assets up fairly.
And I'm here, why?
Because they hate each other. Malcolm structured the will to bring them back together. You have a knack for bringing parties together who don't see eye to eye.
So why is he here?
Because Madison Price requested him.
You sure she's not mixing him up with me?
Hardman had me do some contract work for a couple years back, so I guess I made an impression.
Right. So you each get a sister.
You think pitting us against each other is fair? To Lewis's client?
Please, dividing financial assets, you couldn't shine my shoes.
Someone should.
Well, actually, I personally shine my own shoes, so there you go.
Lucky them.
How come you always ask Donna? Donna, by the way, those are really nice shoes that Lewis has on.
Gentlemen, we're on the same side. And although I would not choose to have you both on this, that is how it fell. So, I expect you to put your differences aside and work together on this so that everyone can be happy. Can you manage that this time?
There is at least 3 levels of conflicts right there. Now, there are scenarios when it comes to conflict of interest where people can waive the conflicts. This does occasionally happen.
Sure.
There are scenarios where, like, if you either used to represent a company and no longer, or if you represent a company where it's not a direct conflict, but there's some sort of confusion, there are ways to waive the conflicts or to have, like, certain lawyers, be basically walled off from the other matters in order to allow a company to represent it. That does not apply here.
Nope.
These are direct as they can get when it comes to a transactional issue, conflicts. This is not allowed to happen, nor should it be allowed to happen. In fact, the second that Jessica mentioned this to Harvey or Lewis, what should have happened is, Jessica, are you okay? Did you hit your head? We can't do this. Instead, of course, because this is Suits, the response was, I'm going to beat you.
Yeah, which is everything that you would want to prevent from happening. Like, all the reasons that you wouldn't allow this to happen are actually depicted in the show. Like,
right.
You wouldn't, even if you had a firewall, you wouldn't want somebody to, like, accidentally see a document.
Correct.
Right.
Or get a vibe.
Let alone intentionally circumvent it to gain the upper hand.
So what's next?
We lose. We give her the tabloid.
Well, how does that make our client happy?
We let Madison have the paper, and then we take everyone who works there and we start a new one. They all love Kelsey. Nothing But the Truth is just a name. We let Madison have it.
I have taught you a thing or two.
Well, I see that you're up to speed. Well, as am I. I noticed there were some employee issues at the tabloid. Contracts about to expire. So I just want to let you guys know that I went ahead and locked up all the key employees. Just to protect us. Since we're all working on this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
He knows.
He can't.
He does.
I was careful. I deleted every file from the server. The only time any paper trail left my locked desk is when I faxed it to Kelsey.
You faxed it from the large machine that stores all the information you put in it to be printed back later by anyone who has your code?
He can't do that. We have a Chinese wall thingy. Oh, God, he's going to beat us, isn't he?
Look, he knows what we're up to, but he couldn't keep his tactics to himself.
So we can use that against him.
And that's how we'll crush Lewis.
Refresher course, Harvey. You and Lewis aren't opponents on this one. You're working together.
Because here's the thing. Pearson Hardman as a law firm is either representing the interests of, or they are, it's a little clear, the personal representative of the company or of the estate. Because we don't actually find out if there's a personal representative or executor or whatever of the will.
Surely there is an executor, but yeah.
And it could be the firm. The firm, like a lawyer at the firm could theoretically be that person, right? I am named as the personal representative with multiple of my friends' wills, and, that could happen. Once that happens, you can then no longer represent the heirs or people who could get the money from that estate. The only scenario that makes any sense in this situation on the show, is that Pearson Hardman represents the estate. Done. Kelsey gets her own lawyer, Madison gets her own lawyer, and they go through the scenario and figure out how to split the shit up. That's the only scenario that makes any sense. There isn't even a scenario where Kelsey and Madison get the same lawyer or even the same law firm. That doesn't make sense either. They would need to both get to completely separate independent counsel or represent themselves, as they're entitled to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then essentially the personal representative, which is assume it's the firm, would figure out how to divvy it up in an appropriate 50-50 manner based on both sides' arguments and their submissions and their proposals. Or, I don't know, maybe they'd look at a will or something, which it sounds like the will may have just had 50-50, which, again, that's a poorly drafted will. And if Pearson Hardman represents him, that's a poor estate planning in so many ways. The whole thing's fucked. To use legal technical terms, the whole thing's fucked.
I mean, the most plausible scenario is if the firm is the executor of the estate, you liquidate everything and divide the assets up 50-50, or divide the proceeds up 50-50, and there.
We're done.
How you should do it, yes.
I mean, that is the simplest approach. There are certainly approaches that would not require them to be liquidated if the heirs could cooperate, but given that the heirs wouldn't cooperate, I'm pretty confident then they'd be like, all right, for instance, when Mike made the offer to Lewis of you sell these companies, you keep these companies, let's say that happened in an appropriate manner where the Pearson Hardman offered that to the two different lawyers for the two heirs, and one of them said, nope, not going to happen. I'm confident the next statement is, okay, we're liquidating everything. You get half, you get half. Get out of my room. That's going to happen. If you don't like it, go petition the court and tell the court why it shouldn't happen. The entire crux of basically plot B in this episode would never happen in any scenario in real life.
And I want to pause for a moment and, well, actually, I want to ask both of you, because my experience is in the nonprofit world. From just a managerial, running a firm perspective, stoking the animosity between Lewis and Harvey seems incredibly stupid.
Plot point. It's great for the plot, Jeff. You got to understand that.
Right. But
we're doing this legal thing because it's great for the plot.
Well, in fact, there are examples of big law firms going bust because of scenarios where the partners couldn't get along and couldn't figure their own shit out and ended up basically animosity toward each other, not able to figure out the financial side of things. And the firm basically, there's examples of big firms in New York basically falling apart because of that.
I'm going to take my clients and go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my associates
I mean, and let's be honest, there, especially at big firms, there is sometimes yes, when you're all partners of law firms and you all, are, trying to work together in some ways, the goal is to work together towards the benefit of the client. Obviously, there's some backdoor deals that happen as to who gets percentages of business, who's actually the real, origination of the client, who gets a better percentage, whatever. But when it comes to the actual legal part, I can't imagine a scenario where two partners are trying to better each other with two different clients who are, that
in the same. Yes. I mean, setting aside that would never happen.
Correct. So understand that it can't happen under the ethics rules. Like, even if that were allowed to be happening, there's no way that's a good managerial approach. Again, she's supposedly the managing partner of one of the New York's prestigious law firms, and I'm not sure if she could manage her single member LLC at the current moment because she's kind of a disaster.
I have not done a ton of wills and estate stuff. I did a very little bit way back when I was fresh out of law school. But the way wills work, when you pass away, the will goes to probate. There is a judge involved somewhere along the way. But that's never discussed here at all.
Right. I mean, it depends upon the jurisdiction. What I can't, like, there's usually, the way it typically works is that you have a personal representative or an executor of the will, however it's described in the will. And their job is to take what's in the will and appropriately hand it out to the heirs. Now, yes, the will does have to go through probate and go into the court, but unless there's an objection, the court's job is to just appoint the right representative. And if there's no objections, they go forward, it happens, and then they close the estate. So that's really how that works.
So
if there's an objection, then it goes to the judge to make certain decisions.
So okay. So then my question is,
and I'm speaking that very generally. I'm not trying to get into specifics, but that's generally how it works.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, would a judge have, up until someone objects, would a judge have looked at this scenario and said, hang on, this doesn't fly?
So I'm just trying to think of the order of operations. Because one, there's no scenario where within a matter of days, everything gets figured out.
Well, right.
Right.
Yeah, this is
step one.
Again, we're in Suits land.
We're in Suits land. Something that should take years is taking minutes. So let's give them some benefit of the doubt that it has taken some time. At some point in a real life scenario, one of the daughters is objecting. 100%.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And I'm confident if Louis Litt puts in the objection when Jessica Pearson is representing the estate and Harvey Specter / Mike Ross, Mike who doesn't even have a law degree, but let's not get into that, is making the other objection, I'm confident the judge is going to be like, what the absolute flying fuck?
Even if you get past all that, they could still put the sale on hold to review it.
Yeah.
I guess they could still put the sale on hold to review it long enough that the sale goes away.
Well, and also they're filing objections. The objections go to the court. Like there's no scenario where it just gets figured out, right?
Yeah.
The court would have to rule on the objections.
Well, so the parties agree to withdraw them, but yeah.
And the courts can be very confused when they have 3 different filings, all with Pearson Hardman.
With the same attorney's name up front. Yeah.
Yes. It's gonna get a little weird.
And it seems that the same firm may be representing the company that buys the tabloid from the estate, maybe.
Well, there's only one law firm in this universe, and it just happens to represent everybody. So the conflicts issue gets worked out eventually.
Yes.
Right. Of course.
There are times that, like, if it's a really good faith sale, like I've seen that happen, where it's like one firm is representing both sides because it happened to be like, a real estate developer and a management company that the firm represents already happened to make a deal. It's like, well, I already represent both of you. We can make this work. You have the number in mind, whatever.
Well, I mean, listen, I had a scenario, and I think I may have told this on the podcast before, where like it turns out one of my own clients threatened to sue another one of my clients, and I wasn't aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it turns out it's because one of them had a subsidiary I was not even aware of when I ran conflicts. And basically, one of the executives at one of my clients had tried to keep me out of it and used internal counsel for it when he normally would have used me. And then I'm on the phone call and someone's like, hey, did anyone ever bring this to your attention? And I'm like, no. And they're like, hey, I'll forward it to you. And so they sent it to me on the email and it pops up and it's got one of my other clients as the signatory to the letter. And I'm like, wait, what? Hold on. Yeah. And I had to be like, who am I talking to? What company am I talking to? And then at some point I made the realization that 2 of my clients were suing each other. And I had that moment of, okay, stop talking.
Yeah.
I cannot represent you in this because I'm conflicted out.
Yep.
And then I called up the other side and I said, you might already be aware of this, but I represent them. What kind of funny ended up happening, I ended up mediating the dispute.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Because it turns out both sides had a number that they could have gotten to but they needed someone to get them there. So it was a very weird mediation that I helped.
That happens.
And it was such a small dispute. It honestly didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But that was one of those where the first thing I said was, nope, can't represent you.
Yep.
Nope, can't represent you. I'm out.
Yeah.
Unless you want me to help. And if I'm helping, I'm doing it in an independent sort of fashion. So, it does happen where like conflicts arise and then you figure out a way to handle it without breaking your ethical obligations to both parties.
In this case, they were intentionally trying to screw over the other party, which happened to be their own party because there's conflict. Because it's very confusing.
Okay, there's like 3 or 4 levels of conflicts that happen.
Like it's resolvable in the situation where like everybody's kind of simpatico, and we want to just like get, we're trying to find a number, we're trying to get to a common result.
Right.
Hi everyone, Derek here with a brief message. The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by my law firm, Morwa P. LLC. One of Morwa PLC's many practice areas is business law. If you are a business owner or someone who is thinking of starting up a new or side business, you need a legal team who can efficiently provide you legal counsel, keeping you and your business away from potential legal issues, and if necessary, representing you in any disputes that do arise. We pride ourselves on being cost efficient while also getting to know our clients. If you want less stress and more support, you need more law. If you would like to set up a free consult, please click on the link in the show notes, visit our website, www.mooreatty.com, that's mooreatty.com, or email us at contact@mooreatty.com. And now, back to the show.
Speaking of getting to simpatico and good results, let's talk about, that's a horrible transition. Let's talk about the fact that the subpoena to Harvey.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Very simpatico.
Because, and we'll drop the clip in here, as I recall, the AG threatens to subpoena Harvey to give grand jury testimony.
Harvey? Harvey Specter.
Alexandra Leeds, I hear you're working for the Attorney General's office.
And you're fighting for the oppressive capitalists.
Winning for the oppressive capitalists.
Good for you. We should have lunch. Catch up.
Who told you I was coming here tonight?
No one.
I haven't seen you in 5 years. You want to catch up? You want something from me, and it isn't lunch.
I want to talk about Cameron Dennis.
6 feet, Pisces, wavy hair.
I'm serious.
I haven't worked for Cameron in over a decade. What's there to talk about?
The Attorney General's investigating allegations that he systematically buried evidence to get convictions.
So talk to people who actually work with the guy.
That's the problem. He's still their boss. Nobody's talking.
Neither am I. Over lunch or anywhere else, so best of luck.
Harvey, I was hoping for some lunch. I'm having you subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury. Enjoy your dinner. Give Cameron my best.
Is this before or after she deposes him in court?
Well, I think she deposes him in court.
Yeah.
As a way of being like, this is what it's going to be like.
Yeah, you, Mr. Attorney, have never been to court, right?
Right. So let's talk about a couple different things. Let's talk about the fact that typically when you are, so the grand jury, for those of you who have paid attention to, I don't know, many different criminal trials over the last few years that involve the current leader of our freaking country, may have heard of some grand jury testimony. Well, one being released, even though it's not helpful for purposes of the thing it was released for.
So a grand jury is convened in order to issue an indictment. Essentially, they are presented with evidence by the prosecutor in order to determine whether it is sufficient to support an indictment. That is what a grand jury does.
Well, what I was going to say was, and this is, I think, the point I was trying to make earlier. Thank you, Jeff. The point of a grand jury, though, is you use the best evidence you have. You're not subpoenaing people who may not be cooperative witnesses generally in front of a grand jury. You are bringing in the best witnesses you have, which is why a lot of times, the cops are the ones that are testifying because they obviously work hand in hand with the prosecutors a lot of times. You rarely bring in a combative witness in front of the grand jury because you don't have to get that high of a bar. You are just basically trying to show that there's enough evidence that it can proceed to an indictment, where then you have to go through the actual process of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't see a scenario where a prosecutor or the AG's office or whoever would threaten a subpoena to get you to go in front of the grand jury. Tell me if I'm wrong. I just don't see that happening.
In the grand scheme of things, it may have happened at some point, just because there's a lot of attorney generals out there. But yeah, no, it's not a common thing.
That's not a common threat.
No reason for it to happen.
Right. No, yes, there are subpoenas to give testimony. And in fact, I think what they mean to say is she's subpoenaing him to be deposed under oath, where she's then trying to like scare him into telling the truth.
Especially because he could just plead the fifth to everything, in which case you just wasted everybody's time.
Yeah.
Also true. So anyway, apparently she does subpoena him, but she subpoenas him for a deposition. And again, in suits when this happens minutes or hours later, not what would normally be. Well, you in New York, if you give a subpoena, you have to give a certain amount of time before you can give testimony. In fact, I think it's 30 days after you are served, which again, we have no proof he was ever served. Ever. Service isn't a thing in suits, guys. You don't get served. It just happens. Everyone in suits land can just be served at any moment in any capacity through email without a problem, I guess.
And I guess you can like reserve the courtroom for your deposition.
Well, right. Which is where we're going. Because as we know, prosecutors just have access to courtrooms.
Agreed.
It's not because that's just how that works. What? Listen, I am aware of the fact that there is a couple places inside the New York courthouses that where they are reserved if you wanted to use them for depositions or other things. Because there are some lawyers that don't necessarily have an office or, appropriate place. So you can reserve rooms. They're not courtrooms. They are conference rooms. It's a table.
I will say,
please tell me, as Mike's about to tell us that he's had a deposition in front of him.
I did a Zoom mediation today, and I was in court for another matter. So I ran off, and there was a new courtroom one and was going to be open. So I just was sitting in prosecution's table, doing some Zoom mediations today for a couple hours.
Well, listen, that 100% could happen where you jump into an empty courtroom when you know the judge isn't using it. I am confident you can't reserve a judge's courtroom for purposes of a deposition.
No, not in New York.
You certainly can't have him sitting in the actual box where, the witness would be.
Did you and District Attorney Cameron Dennis work closely together?
He was my boss. He supervised all my cases.
And were you personally close?
Subjective.
A judge would allow it.
And yet there's not one here. Do you really think by deposing him on the stand you're going to intimidate him?
I think deposing him here will let him know what it will be like if this evidence is brought forward at trial.
You're not getting to trial.
If your client doesn't perjure himself right now, I won't have to.
Pretty sure that's not allowed. The whole thing's weird.
I have a question regarding criminal procedure, because this is a criminal investigation. We're talking about a grand jury. This is not a civil matter.
Right.
I am not a criminal attorney. Don't want to be a criminal attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Are there depositions?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be just a sit down in an interrogation room or some equivalent?
Here's my understanding. They're definitely less frequent than criminal cases or than civil cases. A lot of times because the defendant has the Sixth Amendment right to confront witnesses, so they have to be allowed to cross-examine them in open court.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of times, a deposition may be reserved to, preserve testimony.
Okay. All right.
I could see a scenario where you depose people if, if they were a potential victim of the defendant and they don't want to travel and they're worried or something, so they might be doing some testimony off premises or something. It's not as normal. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
It's certainly not as normal. I'm pretty confident that it would be fully recorded and possibly used later in court. That would be a scenario where you're almost giving an actual testimony and you could be able to use it later. That's my understanding.
Okay.
I will say I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know criminal stuff nearly as well. I feel it can't be as often as civil.
I would assume not.
But I think it's really about preservation of testimony. I think is really the big reason. We could summarize it by basically saying, in addition to the fact that the deposition is ridiculous, depositions are a much less frequently used device for criminal cases.
A federal rule of criminal procedure governing depositions. So, okay. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm looking at it. So it's criminal rule civil procedure 15. It says a party may move that a prospective witness be deposed in order to preserve testimony for trial. The court may grant the motion because of exceptional circumstances in the interest of justice. So this seems like more the exception rather than the rule, which is reason number 32 why this deposition would have not happened in open court. Not open court, private court, but in a courtroom.
Right. In a
rented out courtroom.
Do we want to get into the whole ethics part of just the fact that, so Harvey was apparently the mentee of the district attorney and was aware of the fact that the district attorney committed some version of an ethics violation.
Harvey, why did you leave?
He had a case. I caught him burying a key piece of evidence he was obligated to turn over. The guy was guilty. The defense would have used it to let him walk.
All right, what kind of exposure do you have?
I told him no. He didn't listen.
Then you were obligated to report him.
Which is why I left.
Why didn't you tell me this at the time?
Because you put me there, Jessica, to be mentored, okay? And it occurred to me that might have been exactly what you wanted me to learn.
For the record, it wasn't. I'm going to represent you at this deposition. I'm going to try to keep you from talking. But I think you should.
He was my mentor.
He is a public servant.
He was my mentor.
The standards are higher.
He was my mentor. And I am not going to be the one to expose him any more than I'd ever turn on you.
What was he supposed to do? What could he have done? What are his ethical obligations?
So it's a little unclear what he knew, but assuming he knew that evidence was not being produced, he has a duty as an officer of the court to come forward.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably mechanisms to do that anonymously in New York. He could certainly have called up the ethics hotline for New York and gotten advice, and that would have been one way to cover his butt at least. But yeah, he should have come forward in some form because that evidence is, you have an obligation to turn that evidence over. It would certainly be a mistrial.
This is not a scenario, I think, where you can quietly withdraw or something like that.
No,
this has to be what we would call a noisy withdrawal from a.
Yeah, if your name especially is on it, then absolutely, there's no way around that.
Mike had before mentioned the ethics hotline. I just want to briefly get into that. Oh, sure. I know I'm pretty sure most jurisdictions have it, but I know DC and New York does because those are the two places I'm admitted.
Yeah, that's where
there is basically a hotline you could call that is essentially you asking for ethical advice from, I think is it from Bar Council? Or there?
It is.
Or does it depend? I know DC. I think DC. It's from the council for the DC bar, but effectively you're doing it to get info. They can't do anything to you. They want you to call up and ask questions and sort of get information. I have called them multiple occasions to ask what are completely innocuous questions. And sometimes they get really excited about looking it up because they're like, "Oh, that's something I haven't heard of."
Right. It is the ethics council bar. These are the people who nerd out about it the same way.
Right.
Whatever subject you're specializing in is going to be your passion.
Right. Well, and so I've called them a couple times just to be like, "Hey, I had this weird issue. I don't think I need to do anything, but hey, I'm just going to run it past you and make sure I'm not missing anything." And I think I've called 3 times. 2 of the times they were like, "Yep, you're good. Nothing to report. You don't have any real information, blah, blah, blah." There was one time where they're like, "Ooh, let's dive into that." And I was on the phone for 2 hours talking about a very innocuous issue that they ended up basically being like, "You have no duty to do anything." But it was I just wanted to cover myself is really what I wanted to do.
Sure. Yep.
If I was in Harvey's situation,
I think it's a very good first step if you're genuinely not sure. If you were in Harvey's situation, I don't think it's actually that complicated. But if, let's say, you are conflicted somehow or it has slowly crept into this position, a good first step, because maybe they'll say "Oh, actually, there's a loophole and you're totally fine." And at the very least, you have something to cover your ass and say, "On the advice of counsel, I thought I didn't have to."
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest scenario that we would have is what happens in a case. So, like, let's say with Mike, you're working with a partner at your firm. Jeff, you're working with, like, I don't know, another counsel that, is maybe running the case,
my
and you're like
local
co-counsel.
counsel somewhere. Yeah.
Same thing with me. Like, I'm working with another firm, another counsel, and they decide that, you want to know what? There's like this set of documents that they claim. You want to know what? That's irrelevant. We're not going to produce it, even though you're like, well, not only is it relevant, it is very relevant, and it's bad for us, and we should produce it. And there's no real reason we shouldn't produce it. And they're just like, nope, not producing it. We're not going to send it over. What's your obligation? Is your obligation to withdraw? Is it to not do anything? What are you supposed to do? And from my scenario, my first call would be to the ethics board. It really would be, to just ask them what to do. And I would probably follow their advice to the letter.
Yeah, especially if you can get them to put it. I would love to get that in writing, just in case it ever pops up.
Yeah.
You have at least
honestly,
this fig leaf.
I honestly don't know how that works, because I've never actually had to do it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in that case, you probably have to pay somebody. You probably need.
I would honestly get representation immediately if there was something that was that bad.
If you were really concerned about it, if Alex Jones hiding documents kind of situation, then yeah.
Yes. Well, there's that. But yeah, I mean, in Harvey's case, what he probably should have done, and it sounds like Jessica knew, he probably should have hired Pearson Hardman to represent him, and then he makes the ethics violation. He sends it to the ethics committee, and goes after Dennis. That's probably what should have happened. Instead, apparently, what happened was Jessica gave him a job.
But he's his mentor, and that's such an important relationship that you would never do anything to harm your mentor, no matter how unscrupulous or...
Right.
He was my mentor.
He is a public servant.
He was my mentor.
The standards are higher.
He was my mentor. And I am not going to be the one to expose him any more than I'd ever turn on you.
No, listen. From what I can tell, I don't think there's nothing ethical about Cameron Dennis, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Granted, it's only one episode, and we find out later he's not great. But listen, there's a couple of lawyers I've worked with in my life who I would consider to be my mentors. If a situation like this happened where I thought they were doing something, I would have to confront them on it. And then if they kept backing down, then you got to go to the next step. It's unclear if Harvey even confronted him on it or if he just jumped ship.
Yeah, well, I mean, he wanted him to come in and do TPS reports on Saturdays, so can't have that.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow. So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay? Oh, and I almost forgot. I'm also going to need you to go ahead and come in on Sunday, too, okay? We lost some people this week, and we need to sort of play catch-up. Thanks.
I was trying to remember where it is from. The hell makes sense now.
Wait, is that the same? How am I just realizing
Yeah, that's
this?
Slumberg.
Jesus. I feel like he looks younger now.
Well, this was 2011.
Yeah, but
Office Space was 2000.
Was like, yeah, 99.
Christ, it was 25 years ago? Oh my God.
Yeah.
We already hit the internal wall thing about the ethics because even in Suits Land, even in Suits Land, even
Grey's Anatomy,
in any realm and in any created space, even if we believe that there's a scenario where Mike and Lewis could represent two different heirs of this estate, if they had said you can't look at each other's documents, there needed to be, and this is a big law firm, they are capable of doing this. They are capable of creating an internal electronic wall so that you can't look at each other's documents, because that would have to happen. There was one scenario at my big firm where two clients did waive a conflict, but to a point where we could not have access to the other side's documents, and so they did that. The IT department made sure that there were certain anything with this client's documents. I could not access the internal server if I tried. And, not that I needed to be told that. This may shock you. I wasn't actively trying to do that. But here, it seemed like both sides were actively trying to do that, which is great and not ethical violations at all. As I said, this is a very self-contained episode. It's still ridiculous.
It's not good, guys.
It's not good.
Want to get to the reviews?
Yeah, well, we can get to the reviews. I know we're all going to say the law blows. That just goes without saying. I'm curious if we're going to ever find a Suits episode where we even have a conversation about the law. Like,
Did we want to touch on the complications of romantic relationships between
when you kiss your paralegal, but you're dating your best friend's ex?
Don't do that.
Your ex-best friend's ex?
Don't do your ex-best friend's ex. We're only 11 episodes in, and it's already a weird web of relationship nonsense.
You know what's... I've forgotten all about this. Mike, do you remember our orientation at Rutgers?
Vaguely, yes.
It was bizarre how quickly they were like almost encouraging, like not that they had to discourage it or anything, but encouraging us to treat law school like a dating pool.
Yeah, it did stand out where they're like multiple people being like, and I met my wife here, and I
right, yeah.
You might be married by the time you graduate.
Which was strange on its own, but also is a weird precedent to set before you go into the professional setting.
Oh,
Maybe not the mindset people should be in as they're learning how to be professionals.
This is pre-Me Too movement, I guess.
I mean, yes.
Well, and listen, I will say when you get into to go from the law school to the law firm aspect, like the difference between the law school and the law firm is that in the law firm, you're working 12 plus hour days with the same people over and over again. You're going to be like, for years when I was at my big firm, like the people I worked with were my best friends because that's just, you're surrounded next to them all the time. Your life is either sleeping at the firm working with them, and then when you occasionally have other time off, I'm normally sleeping or drinking sometimes with the people I worked with at my firm. It is a big chunk of your life. There is a very reasonable chance that you're going to get into relationships with those people. In this situation, it's probably not ideal that you are dating someone and then probably in love with a paralegal and may or may not have informed one of the partners who is one of the weirdest partners ever about this, and then he gets into your life.
Yeah.
Jenny comes to drop off a suit at the office, and what do? You kiss me.
You know, I seem to recall you kissing me too.
Yeah, that's the problem. I did, and it was great. But it's too late. You were too late, and I can't do any of this.
Do what?
This. You joking about your first time or rubbing my shoulders or touching my arm? You're playing with me, and you know it.
What I know is you're playing with me too. You kept flirting with me long after you started dating her.
Yeah, well, that's going to stop.
Good. You know, and while you're at it, no more running to me for favors or asking me for help. How about you find yourself some other paralegal? Because as far as I'm concerned, we're done.
And also, there's weird power dynamics there of, she
You're 100% right.
like,
it is also probably the most realistic aspect of the show.
Yeah.
I mean, that is fair too. Yeah, I mean,
yes.
Yes, people start romantic relationships in the workplace. That happens all the time.
That's one realistic part of the show.
And I'll say, I haven't seen those episodes. I don't know if anything there amounts to sexual harassment, which keeps coming up in all of the stuff we've been watching lately.
Apparently all the stuff we watch has some version of sexual. As we said before, Jeff loves sexual harassment.
He's all about it. He's a big sexual harasser. Guy.
I studied employment discrimination specifically, is what they are saying.
So, I think we can all agree the law is fucked once again. Listen, I was more entertained by this episode. I still don't think it's a good episode.
I don't understand how the show is quite as popular as it has been. I think my mom watches this show. I don't know if that's, I don't know.
It's one of those things where, like, at least me personally, I have to disband any version of a legal reality belief. Like, you just have to sort of watch it for the train wrecks.
All right. So we didn't
But-
like either of them. We don't like suits. More of a slacks and a t-shirt kind of guy.
But let's be honest, it gives us a lot of fodder to talk about.
There we go.
It
Yeah.
does.
By the way, listener, very little back end work went into us talking about the last 2 Suits episodes.
Nope.
Not a lot of research, not a lot of intensity.
We can do all this from personal experience.
It's not like that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of the stuff that we just know is not correct.
Yeah.
I do want to highlight in my no on the entertainment side, this was the episode where I started really disliking Gina Torres' character. I wanted to like her character in the first episode. After this one, it's like, no, you are awful. Awful.
So here's what I'll say is, and because I'm going to force you guys to watch Suits again. If Mike's going to continue to make me watch King of the Hill, I'm going to make you guys watch Suits.
It makes good content.
And it's great content. I will say, as the series goes on, certain characters become more likable.
Okay.
And certain ones become less likable.
I wonder if that's going to apply if I'm just watching one random episode a season.
Well, I'm actually going to be curious because, like, you guys are going to end up watching, like, sort of bits and pieces of a bunch of seasons. I will tell you, at no time do I ever like Gina Torres' character. Like, I don't think there's ever any moments where I'm like, switch to her being a good version.
Interesting.
But the other characters start turning into good arcs.
Okay.
At least I think so. But
well, for now, I will take your word for it.
Yeah. But anyway, hey, good times, guys. A lot to talk about in a in a relatively self-contained episode.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwa PLLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves, and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2025, all rights reserved.